ほら、ルフィ、今一緒に海賊になる仲間を探してるんだ。
Hello guys, welcome to my channel The Wandering Zoro, your go-to destination for anime-related content. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest videos. In today's video, we're going to be diving into part 1 of the series. So be sure to stick around until the end, and let's get started. The vibrant hues of All Might's heroic deeds flashed across the television screen, a dazzling display of power and charisma that usually sent shivers of awe down the spines of most 4-year-olds. In the small, cluttered living room of the Midoriya household, Inko watched with a soft smile as the #1 hero effortlessly apprehended a villain with a booming laugh and a signature catchphrase. But beside her, Izuku sat with a furrowed brow, his emerald eyes narrowed in critical observation rather than admiration. "He just punched him," Izuku muttered, his small hands fidgeting with a discarded circuit board he'd salvaged from a broken toy. He didn't even try to analyze the villain's quirk or the structural integrity of the building they were fighting near. Just pow. He punctuated his statement with a dismissive wave of his hand. Inko chuckled, ruffling his already messy green curls. "That's All Might, sweetie. He's strong and saves everyone with a smile." Izuku sighed, a sound far too world-weary for a child his age. "Strength is important, Mom, I know, but it's not everything. What if the villain had a quirk that couldn't be beaten by just punching? What if the building was unstable and could have collapsed on innocent people? They just rely on their quirks, like it solves every single problem." He poked at the circuit board with a small screwdriver, his gaze intense. "It's inefficient. Logically unsound." His mother blinked, a little taken aback by his unusually analytical pronouncements. Most children his age were mimicking All Might's poses and shouting plus ultra. Izuku, on the other hand, seemed more interested in the mechanics of the world around him, constantly taking apart and sometimes putting back together anything he could get his hands on. The news report continued, showcasing other heroes in action. A water-manipulating hero extinguishing a fire with a dramatic flourish, a speedster blurring through the streets to catch a purse snatcher, a telekinetic hero levitating debris. With each display of quirk-based heroism, Izuku's frown deepened. "See," he exclaimed, pointing at the screen as the water hero simply blasted water at the flames. "They're not even considering the chemical composition of the fire. What if it was a grease fire? Water would just make it worse. It's all just brute force and flashy abilities. Where's the strategy? Where's the science?" Inko, though sometimes perplexed by her son's unusual interests, always tried to be supportive. "Well, honey, the heroes are trained professionals. They know what they're doing." "But how do they know?" Izuku persisted, his voice rising slightly in frustration. "Do they run experiments? Do they calculate probabilities? Do they develop countermeasures based on rigorous scientific principles? It doesn't look like it. It looks like they just react with their quirks." He threw his hands up in exasperation. It's like humanity just stopped thinking the moment everyone started getting these quirks. His mind raced, already formulating complex theories about quirk manifestations and their limitations. He saw heroes as one-trick ponies, reliant on their innate abilities without truly understanding the underlying mechanics or exploring alternative solutions. He remembered reading, or rather, having his mother read to him about the great scientific advancements of the past, the development of electricity, the understanding of gravity, the exploration of space. It felt like humanity had been on the cusp of a new era, an era of scientific discovery and interstellar travel. But then quirks had arrived, and everyone had become fixated on these genetic lottery tickets, forgetting the power of human intellect and systematic inquiry. The next week was Izuku's 4th birthday, the day when children usually manifested their quirks. He watched his classmates with a detached curiosity, observing the various displays of nascent abilities. A boy who could slightly elongate his fingers, a girl who could make small sparks appear in her palms. Katsuki Bakugo, his childhood friend, or rather, tormentor in the making, already boasted a powerful explosion quirk, tiny bursts of controlled detonations erupting from his hands. Bakugo strutted around the playground, basking in the attention, a sneer plastered on his face as he showed off his burgeoning power. "Deku, you still haven't gotten your useless quirk yet?" Bakugo sneered, shoving Izuku slightly. You'll probably get something weak and pathetic, just like you. Izuku simply adjusted the imaginary glasses on his nose, a habit he'd picked up from old science documentaries. Quirks are merely biological anomalies, Kaken. They are interesting from a scientific standpoint, but they are not the sole measure of human potential. Bakuga scoffed, his small explosions crackling louder. What's that supposed to mean, you quirkless loser? The word hit Izuku with a strange sense of relief. He hadn't manifested a quirk. While other children his age would be crying and devastated, a small, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. Later that day, at the doctor's office, the diagnosis was confirmed. Izuku Midoriya was quirkless. His mother's eyes welled up with tears, a mixture of sadness and worry for her son's future in a quirk-dominated society. I'm so sorry, Izuku, she sobbed, pulling him into a tight hug. I'm so sorry. Izuku, however, patted her back reassuringly. It's all right, Mom. Really. In fact, he paused, a spark of excitement igniting in his emerald eyes. This is fascinating. Inko looked at him, bewildered. Fascinating. Izuku, you won't be able to become a hero. Heroes, Izuku interrupted, his voice filled with a newfound conviction, are a temporary phenomenon. A societal crutch. They rely on unpredictable, often illogical abilities instead of systematic understanding and innovation. Humanity was on the verge of unlocking the secrets of the universe. We were close to reaching for the stars. And then quirks. Everyone became obsessed with these genetic mutations, squandering their intellectual potential on flashy powers instead of true progress. He gestured emphatically, his small body buzzing with energy. Think about it, Mom. All the research, all the resources poured into quirk enhancement and hero support. What if that same effort was directed towards scientific advancement? We could have had flying cars by now. We could have cured diseases. We could have established colonies on the moon. Inko stared at her son, her sadness slowly giving way to confusion. This wasn't the reaction she had expected. But being a hero is a noble goal, Izuku. They save people. They react to problems, Mom. Izuku countered, his voice sharp with intellectual fervor. They don't solve the underlying issues. They're like glorified firefighters, constantly putting out blazes instead of designing fireproof buildings in the first place. True progress comes from understanding the fundamental laws of the universe and applying that knowledge to improve life for everyone, not just reacting to crises with superpowers. He climbed off the examination table, his small frame radiating an unexpected intensity. This quirkless diagnosis, it's not a setback, Mom. It's an opportunity. An opportunity to focus on what truly matters, the power of the human mind, the elegance of scientific inquiry, the boundless potential of human ingenuity. He struck a pose, one hand dramatically pointing towards the ceiling. Let's get excited, Mom. The age of heroes is nearing its end, and the age of science is about to begin. From that day forward, Izuku's obsession with science intensified. While other children played heroes and villains, Izuku could be found in his room surrounded by books on physics, chemistry, astronomy, and engineering. He devoured knowledge with an insatiable hunger, his already sharp mind absorbing complex concepts with astonishing speed. His IQ, initially within the gifted range, seemed to skyrocket as he relentlessly challenged himself, constantly seeking new information and making intricate connections between seemingly disparate fields. His room transformed into a makeshift laboratory, filled with disassembled electronics, half-finished experiments, and stacks of notebooks filled with his meticulous observations and groundbreaking at least in his 4-year-old mind theories. He talked to himself constantly, muttering about the inefficiencies of hero society and the glorious potential of a science-driven future. The reliance on quirks is a fundamental flaw in the current societal structure, he'd murmur, carefully dissecting an old radio. It creates a system of inherent inequality, where power is arbitrarily distributed based on genetic chance. True equality can only be achieved through knowledge and understanding, accessible to all. The heroes think they're protecting us, but they're actually stagnating our progress. 10 billion% sure of it. His interactions with Katsuki Bakugu remained volatile. Bakugu, whose explosive quirk grew stronger with each passing day, continued his relentless bullying, fueled by a mixture of superiority and a strange, almost resentful awareness of Izuku's sharp intellect. "Still playing with your junk, Deku?" Bakugo would sneer, often accompanied by his two lackeys. "Why don't you just accept that you're a quirkless nobody? You'll never be a hero." Izuku would often ignore him, his mind lost in some complex equation or theoretical problem. But sometimes he couldn't resist a retort, delivered with an air of detached intellectual superiority that only infuriated Bakugo further. Heroism, as currently practiced, is a statistically improbable and thermodynamically inefficient method of societal problem-solving. Kaken, Izuku would say, his gaze unwavering. True progress lies in understanding the fundamental laws of the universe and applying them systematically. Bakugo's response would invariably involve explosions and threats, which Izuku would calmly observe, occasionally making notes on the properties of Bakugo's quirk. The rapid expansion of nitroglycerin-like compounds generated by your quirk appears to exhibit a correlation between emotional state and explosive yield, he'd mumble, much to Bakugo's incandescent rage. Despite the bullying, Izuku remained undeterred. He saw Bakugo and the other quirk-obsessed children as prime examples of the societal stagnation he so vehemently opposed. They were so focused on their innate abilities that they neglected the development of their minds, becoming reliant on brute force rather than strategic thinking. As he grew older, his understanding of the world deepened, and his conviction solidified. He saw the limitations of hero society, the reliance on reactive measures, the lack of long-term solutions, the inherent biases and inequalities created by the quirk system. He devoured news reports, not with admiration for the heroes, but with a critical eye, analyzing their strategies, identifying their flaws, and mentally devising more efficient, science-based solutions. Another building destroyed due to collateral damage, he'd sigh, shaking his head. Imagine if they had utilized structural analysis and targeted energy dispersal techniques. The destruction could have been minimized by at least 37.8%. These heroes, they lack vision. They lack scientific rigor. He spent hours in libraries, poring over ancient texts and cutting-edge scientific journals, tracing the history of human innovation and marveling at the ingenuity of past generations. He saw a clear trajectory, from early humans using tools and fire to the scientific revolution and the dawn of the space age. Quirks, in his view, were a detour, a fascinating but ultimately limiting evolutionary branch that had distracted humanity from its true potential. "We were on the verge of interstellar travel," he'd exclaimed to his bewildered mother. "We were unraveling the mysteries of the cosmos. And now, everyone's just worried about who has the biggest explosion or the fastest speed. It's a tragedy, a monumental waste of human potential." His goal became clear, a burning ambition that fueled his relentless pursuit of knowledge. He wouldn't become a hero. He would become a scientist, a revolutionary who would dismantle the outdated and inefficient hero-centric society and usher in a new era, the age of science. He would remind humanity of its intellectual prowess, its capacity for innovation, its destiny among the stars. "The age of heroes is drawing to a close," he'd whisper to himself, hunched over a complex diagram of a theoretical energy conduit. Their flashy quirks and short-sighted solutions cannot sustain progress indefinitely. The future belongs to those who understand the fundamental laws of the universe, those who can innovate and create, those who can think. And I, Izuku Midoriya, quirkless wonder and harbinger of a new dawn, I will be the one to light the way. Let's get excited. The scientific revolution is 10 billion% inevitable. His journey had begun, not on a path paved with heroic aspirations, but on a quest for knowledge, driven by a profound belief in the power of the human mind and a resolute determination to reshape the world. The quirkless boy who saw heroes as foolish would one day aim to dismantle their entire system, one scientific breakthrough at a time. The age of heroes might be dominant now, but in the mind of young Izuku Midoriya, its expiration date was already being calculated. The fluorescent lights of Aldera High School hummed overhead, casting a sterile glow on the classroom. At 6'2", Izuku Midoriya was a striking figure, his lean build hinting at a surprising underlying strength developed through years of unorthodox experimentation and a self-imposed physical regimen. His silver-streaked dark hair, a permanent memento of a volatile hair dye experiment, involving concentrated nitrates and a poorly ventilated bathroom, framed a sharp, intelligent face. His emerald eyes, now even more intense with the accumulation of vast knowledge, scanned the room with an air of detached observation. He sat quietly at his desk, idly sketching complex molecular structures in a worn notebook, oblivious to the chatter of his classmates. The teacher, a portly man with a perpetually tired expression, shuffled into the classroom carrying a stack of papers. "All right, settle down, he droned, placing the papers on his desk with a sigh. "As you all know, you're in your final year. It's time to start thinking seriously about your future." Specifically, he held up the stack of papers, "Your post-secondary education. These are your college application forms." A wave of excited murmurs rippled through the class. Quirks flared momentarily, a student's fingers elongated into tendrils, another's skin shimmered with a faint glow. The air crackled with anticipation, the collective dream of heroic futures palpable. The teacher, however, had a mischievous glint in his eye. With a sudden flick of his wrist, he tossed the entire stack of application forms into the air. They fluttered down like useless confetti, landing haphazardly on desks and the floor. "Just kidding," he announced with a wry smile. "Let's be real. You all want to be heroes, right?" The classroom erupted in cheers and enthusiastic displays of their quirks. The water manipulator from middle school unleashed a small but impressive jet of water. The elongating fingers student stretched his appendages across the aisle, and the sparking girl created miniature lightning bolts that danced between her fingertips. It was a cacophony of youthful ambition and raw power. Amidst the boisterous display, two figures remained conspicuously still. Katsuki Bakugu, now a muscular youth with an ever-present scowl and even more volatile explosions, sat with his arms crossed, a look of arrogant certainty on his face. Beside him, Izuku continued to sketch in his notebook, seemingly unfazed by the commotion. With a sudden, explosive burst, Bakugu launched himself onto his desk, striking a dramatic pose. "Listen up, extras," he roared, his voice laced with characteristic arrogance. "I'm the one who's going to UA. I'll be the #1 hero, surpassing even All Might. You'll all be lucky to even be in the same vicinity as my greatness." The teacher, used to Bakugu's bombastic pronouncements, simply sighed. Yes, Bakugu. We're all aware of your aspirations." Speaking of UA, he consulted his clipboard. Bakugu Katsuki has indeed listed the heroics course as his first choice. No surprises there. He scanned the rest of the list. "Now, let's see Midoriya." A hush fell over the class. All eyes turned to Izuku, a mixture of curiosity and disdain in their gazes. They knew he was quirkless, an anomaly in their quirk-dominated world. The idea of him even considering UA's heroics course was laughable. "Midoriya Izuku," the teacher continued, a slight frown creasing his brow as he read Izuku's application. "You've also applied to UA." A collective snicker rippled through the classroom. Bakugu's eyes widened in disbelief, then narrowed into furious slits. "What did you say, Teach? That Quirkless Deku thinks he can get into UA's hero course? He's even more pathetic than I thought." He jumped off his desk, explosions crackling in his palms, and stomped towards Izuku. "You think you can even stand on the same ground as me, you useless piece of—" Before Bakugu could reach him, Izuku subtly shifted in his seat. It was a movement so swift and precise that most of the class missed it entirely. Bakugu stumbled, his foot catching on the leg of Izuku's desk, and he pitched forward, landing in an undignified heap on the floor. "Perhaps you should focus on maintaining your center of gravity, Kaken," Izuku said calmly, not even looking up from his notebook. "A stable foundation is crucial for any endeavor, even explosive ones." Bakugu roared in frustration, sparks flying from his hands. "You think you're so smart, Deku? I'll show you smart." "Bakugu." The teacher's voice rose, finally regaining control of the situation. "Get back to your seat. Now." Bakugu, still fuming, reluctantly obeyed. The class, however, was now buzzing with a new wave of whispers. Had Quirkless Midoriya just dodged Bakugu? Actually, the teacher continued, his eyes scanning Izuku's application again with a newfound curiosity. "Midoriya hasn't applied for the heroics course." The murmurs intensified. "If not heroics, then what?" "He's applied for Class 1X." The teacher paused, looking genuinely perplexed. It seems to be a newly established department. The description says Advanced Studies in Applied Sciences and Engineering. It mentions specialized curricula in physics, chemistry, advanced mathematics, robotics, and even law. He looked up, bewildered. There's no mention of heroics whatsoever. It says the program is designed for individuals seeking careers in scientific research, technological innovation, and legal frameworks supporting scientific advancement. A stunned silence fell over the classroom. This was unheard of. UA, the most prestigious hero academy in the country, offering a program with no hero training? Bakugu's jaw dropped. What the hell is that, Deku? Some kind of loser class for rejects who can't be heroes? Izuku finally looked up, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. One might say it is a class for those who understand that true power comes not from random genetic mutations, but from the systematic application of knowledge and reason, Kaken. A class for those who aim to build the future, not just react to its crises. Build the future? Bakuga scoffed. What a load of SHD. Heroes are the ones who protect the future. Protection is a temporary measure, Kaken, Izuku countered, his voice calm but firm. Innovation is the foundation of lasting progress. The teacher, eager to regain control, cleared his throat. All right, let's not get into philosophical debates. Bakugu, back to your seat. Midoriya's choices are his own. Let's continue with the application reviews. The rest of the class proceeded in a daze. The revelation of Izuku's non-heroic aspirations had thrown their preconceived notions into disarray. Quirkless Midoriya, the boy they had always dismissed as weak and useless, was aiming for a completely different path, one that seemed strangely ambitious in its own way. As the school day drew to a close, Bakugu intercepted Izuku near the school gates, his face a mask of fury. Deku, what the hell is this Class 1X nonsense? You think you're too good for being a hero now, huh? Izuku, who had been reviewing notes on advanced materials science, simply sighed and closed his notebook. My goals lie beyond the limitations of quirk-based heroism, Kaken. While your explosive abilities may be visually impressive, they lack the fundamental understanding necessary for true societal advancement. Bakugo lunged at him, a furious explosion erupting in his palm. I'll show you advancement, you nerd. Izuku, anticipating the attack, took a single step to the side. Bakugo, blinded by rage, stumbled on the uneven pavement and went sprawling, his explosion dissipating harmlessly into the air. Again, Kaken, Izuku said with a hint of exasperation, adjusting his backpack. Stability and controlled application of force are key. Perhaps some foundational physics courses would benefit your explosive tendencies. He stepped over the fallen Bakugo and continued walking, leaving the fuming blonde in his wake. His route home took him under a grimy overpass. The air was thick with the smell of damp concrete and exhaust fumes. Suddenly, a viscous, black sludge erupted from a nearby sewer drain, coalescing into a grotesque, humanoid form. The sludge villain. A perfect hiding place, the villain gurgled, its eyes scanning for a new host. It spotted Izuku, its slimy tendrils reaching out with alarming speed. You'll do nicely, kid. Panic flared momentarily, but Izuku's mind raced. Direct confrontation with brute force was illogical. He needed a different approach. Remembering a volatile mixture he had been experimenting with, a combination of concentrated citric acid and potassium permanganate, known for its rapid exothermic reaction and production of hot, oxidizing gases, he reached into his backpack. He had been transporting a small, sealed container of the mixture for a controlled experiment later. With a swift movement, he flung the container at the sludge villain. It shattered on impact, the chemicals mixing instantly. A violent fizzing erupted, followed by a burst of hot, purple gas that billowed outwards. The sludge villain shrieked, its form convulsing as the oxidizing gas irritated and burned its gelatinous body. Inefficient life form. Izuku muttered, backing away as the villain writhed in agony. Vulnerable to basic chemical reactions. Predictable. Just as the sludge villain was beginning to regain some semblance of control, a booming voice echoed through the underpass. Have no fear, for I am here. All Might, the symbol of peace, descended with a heroic leap, his signature smile gleaming. He took in the scene, the struggling villain and the unharmed but slightly disheveled Izuku. A villain. And you. young man, you managed to hold him off," All Might exclaimed, impressed. Before Izuku could offer a scientific explanation of his impromptu chemical weapon, All Might delivered a powerful punch, creating a massive gust of wind that dispersed the remaining sludge and knocked the villain unconscious. "Thank you for your bravery, young man," All Might boomed, quickly collecting the incapacitated villain into a pair of bottles. "You were a great help." Izuku simply nodded, adjusting his backpack. Efficient capture, All Might. Though perhaps a containment unit with a more robust chemical resistance would be advisable for future encounters with this particular type of villain. All Might chuckled, a little taken aback by the analytical observation. "Right you are, young man. Stay safe." With a final wave and a powerful jump, the symbol of peace vanished into the sky. Izuku watched him go, a thoughtful expression on his face. Reliance on overwhelming force effective, but lacks finesse. And the containment method is rudimentary. He continued his walk home, his mind already dissecting the encounter from a purely scientific perspective. Later that evening, as he walked along the shoreline near his home, he noticed a vast stretch of beach choked with mountains of garbage. Discarded appliances, broken furniture, and tons of plastic waste formed a desolate landscape. Izuku stopped, his eyes widening not in disgust, but in analytical interest. Incredible, a veritable treasure trove of raw materials. He murmured, his mind already racing with possibilities. Metals, polymers, ceramics, all just waiting to be repurposed. And the sheer physical exertion required to clear this an excellent opportunity for strength conditioning. He looked out at the polluted expanse, a determined glint in his emerald eyes. The UA practical exam, they want us to bring something to aid in combat. Combat's such a primitive concept. But if they insist on a demonstration of capability, then I shall provide them with a demonstration of ingenuity. I will harness the very waste of this stagnant society to forge the tools of a new era. He clenched his fist, a spark of manic excitement igniting within him. Let's get excited, people. Operation, Reclamation, and Innovation is about to commence. 10 billion% sure. His high school years, devoid of heroic aspirations but brimming with scientific fervor, had unknowingly prepared him for a challenge far greater than any hero course could offer. He would enter UA not as a hopeful hero, but as a budding revolutionary, ready to dismantle the old order and build a future powered by the boundless potential of science. The garbage-strewn beach would become his laboratory, and the practical exam, his first grand demonstration. The age of science was indeed on the horizon, and Izuku Midoriya was ready to usher it in. 10 months, 304 days, 7,296 hours. That was the duration of Izuku Midoriya's self-imposed operation, Reclamation, and Innovation. The once garbage-choked Dagoba Beach had been transformed. Mountains of refuse had been meticulously sorted, analyzed for their material properties, and either processed for reuse or neatly organized for future projects. Izuku's physique had undergone a similar transformation. The constant lifting, hauling, and manipulation of heavy scrap had sculpted his lean frame into one possessing surprising strength and endurance, belying his studious appearance. During his rigorous beach cleaning and invention phase, Izuku had an unexpected encounter. A gaunt, skeletal man with hollowed cheeks and sunken eyes had stumbled upon him one evening, wheezing and clutching his chest. The man introduced himself as Tashinori Yagi. Despite his frail appearance, there was a strange air of familiarity about him, a shadow of a powerful presence. Izuku, ever the pragmatist, had assessed his condition, noting the signs of severe physical strain. He had offered Tashinori water and helped him find a less strenuous path off the beach. Their paths crossed a few more times during Izuku's cleanup efforts, their conversations ranging from the mundane to surprisingly insightful discussions about the state of hero society. Tashinori's views were surprisingly cynical for someone who seemed like a civilian. Izuku never made the connection to the towering figure of All Might, the skeletal man's true identity hidden beneath a veneer of frailty. The day of the UA entrance exams arrived, crisp and bright. The towering gates of the Hero Academy loomed before Izuku, a symbol of the very system he aimed to reform. He carried a large, metallic trunk, its contents the culmination of his 10 months of tireless work. As he approached the entrance, he spotted a familiar head of spiky blonde hair. Katsuki Bakugu stood amidst a throng of nervous applicants, his usual sneer firmly in place. As Izuku walked past, Bakugu deliberately shouldered him. Or rather, he tried to. The impact was akin to a small car colliding with a sturdy oak tree. Bakugu, all 5'7" of explosive fury, bounced harmlessly off Izuku's 6'2" frame, stumbling slightly. "Watch where you're going, Deku." Bakugu snarled, regaining his balance and glaring up at Izuku. Izuku, unfazed, simply adjusted the strap of his trunk. "My apologies, Kaken. Your trajectory was unexpected." He continued towards the entrance, leaving a sputtering Bakugu behind. Inside the sprawling UA campus, applicants were directed to various testing areas. Izuku followed the signs for the Class 1X examination hall. As he stepped into the designated room, his eyebrows rose slightly. It was a spacious lecture hall, equipped with individual desks and advanced testing equipment. However, it was completely empty. He was the only applicant. A proctor, a stern-looking woman with short, practical hair, entered the room carrying a stack of papers. "Midoriya Izuku?" She confirmed, her voice crisp. "Yes, ma'am," Izuku replied, placing his trunk beside a desk in the front row. "You are the sole applicant for the Advanced Studies in Applied Sciences and Engineering program," she stated, her gaze scrutinizing him. "This examination will assess your theoretical knowledge across a range of scientific and legal disciplines. You have 2 hours." She placed a thick booklet and a stylus on his desk. "Begin." Izuku surveyed the exam. It covered topics ranging from quantum mechanics and organic chemistry to patent law and ethical considerations in scientific research. For most high school students, it would be an insurmountable challenge. For Izuku, it was stimulating. He dove into the questions, his mind a whirlwind of equations, theorems, and legal precedents. He scribbled furiously, his pen flying across the pages, his understanding of the subjects far exceeding the expected level for a high school graduate. 20 minutes later, the proctor looked up in surprise as Izuku approached her desk with the completed exam. She took the booklet, her expression incredulous. "You finished already?" she asked, flipping through the densely filled pages. Her eyes widened as she scanned his meticulously detailed answers. "This is remarkable. Your understanding of these concepts is advanced." The material was logically structured and presented no significant conceptual obstacles, Izuku stated matter-of-factly. The proctor, still slightly stunned, directed him to a waiting area where he would receive instructions for the practical exam. Later, in a large auditorium filled with nervous applicants for the heroics course, the practical exam was explained via a large screen projection. Present Mick's booming voice filled the room, outlining the objective: to earn points by disabling villainous robots in a simulated cityscape. He also warned them about a massive, zero-point robot that was essentially an obstacle. Amidst the sea of hopeful heroes, Izuku spotted the blue-haired boy from the entrance, vehemently protesting the inclusion of the zero-pointer, deeming it an unfair obstacle. Izuku filed the observation away, noting the boy's rigid adherence to rules and his apparent lack of adaptability. Finally, the applicants were divided into different battle centers, simulated cityscapes designed for the practical exam. Izuku was assigned to a sector far from Bakugu. As he stood at the starting line, he opened his trunk. From within, he began to assemble his creation. The result was a marvel of repurposed technology. Using scavenged metals, salvaged wiring, and components from discarded electronics, Izuku had constructed a sophisticated exoskeleton. It was a sleek, matte black harness that fit snugly around his torso and limbs. 4 articulated robotic arms extended from his back, each ending in a multi-jointed hand. Integrated into the forearms of both his natural arms, and the robotic appendages were compact, high-powered laser emitters, their lenses gleaming menacingly. The entire system was powered by a series of high-capacity batteries he had salvaged and meticulously refurbished. As Present Mick's voice boomed, "Go!" Izuku didn't hesitate. While other applicants charged forward using their quirks, Izuku activated his exoskeleton. With a quiet whirring sound, the robotic arms sprang to life, mirroring his movements with uncanny precision. He bolted forward, his enhanced strength and the added limbs providing surprising speed and agility. The cityscape was soon filled with the sounds of explosions, elemental attacks, and the metallic clanging of robots being disabled. Izuku moved with calculated efficiency. He didn't engage in unnecessary brawling. Instead, he used his enhanced senses and processing power, his own intellect augmented by the rudimentary onboard computer of his device, to identify the weak points of the robots. With precise laser blasts from both his natural arms and the robotic appendages, he systematically disabled the mechanical villains, targeting joints, power cores, and sensor arrays. He also observed other applicants. Many relied solely on the raw power of their quirks, often causing significant collateral damage. Some struggled against multiple opponents, their abilities ill-suited for crowd control. Izuku, with his array of laser emitters and the versatility of his 4 extra arms, could engage multiple targets simultaneously with controlled bursts of energy. He noticed a flash of purple hair struggling against a group of 2-point robots. The boy, Shinso, seemed to be relying on some form of verbal manipulation, which was ineffective against the non-sentient machines. With a swift movement, Izuku detached one of the smaller laser blasters from his robotic arm and, using another arm, expertly tossed it to Shinso. "Here," Izuku called out. "Utilize directed energy bursts. Target their locomotion systems." Shinso, surprised but quick-thinking, caught the device. After a moment of bewildered inspection, he aimed and fired, successfully disabling a robot. A look of surprised gratitude flashed across his face. Suddenly, a ground-shaking tremor announced the arrival of the 0-point robot. The colossal machine lumbered through the cityscape, its sheer size and destructive potential causing panic among the applicants. Many turned and fled, their focus shifting from gaining points to simply surviving. Izuku, however, didn't flinch. He analyzed the massive robot, his enhanced vision picking out structural weak points and potential sensor locations. He also noticed a brunette girl with a gravity-manipulating quirk caught beneath a pile of rubble, seemingly frozen in fear as the 0-pointer approached. As the massive robot drew closer, Izuku overheard the brunette girl muttering to herself, her voice laced with desperation. "If I throw myself in front of it and get hurt, maybe I can sue UA for negligence and still get in." Izuku's internal processors whirred. Her logic was flawed, her plan reckless and opportunistic. More importantly, it was inefficient. Just as the girl was about to propel herself towards the towering machine, Izuku's robotic arm shot out with surprising speed and strength, clamping firmly but gently around her torso, pulling her back. "That is a statistically improbable and ethically questionable course of action," Izuku stated calmly, his robotic arm holding her securely. "Furthermore, it demonstrates a fundamental misunderstanding of risk assessment and legal proceedings." Before the girl could respond, a loud siren blared, signaling the end of the practical exam. The 0-point robot lumbered to a halt. Moments later, in a separate observation room overlooking the battle centers, the UA staff watched the recorded feeds with a mixture of astonishment and intrigue. Nizu, the principal, a small, intelligent creature with a perpetual smile, leaned forward, his gaze fixed on the footage of Izuku Midoriya. Well, Nizu mused, his voice sharp and insightful. "It seems our Class 1X applicant is quite unconventional." Eraserhead, his usual tired expression even more pronounced, watched the footage of Izuku's efficient takedowns. His control over those devices is impressive, and his analysis of the robot's weaknesses was spot on. Midnight, her playful demeanor slightly subdued, was intrigued by Izuku's appearance and his unique approach. "He certainly stands out. That gear, it's like nothing I've ever seen." All Might, in his skeletal form as Toshinori Yagi, watched with a flicker of recognition in his hollow eyes. He remembered the earnest young man from the beach. The feed switched to Izuku's interaction with Shinso. Cementos, a hero with the power to manipulate concrete, commented, giving his weapon to another examinee? "That's unexpected. Not exactly a heroic act focused on self-preservation." Nizu chuckled. Perhaps it was an act of strategic resource allocation, or perhaps an experiment in externalizing his capabilities. Then, the feed showed the 0-pointer approaching the brunette girl, and Izuku's robotic arm intervening. The audio picked up her muttered plan. Did she just say she was going to intentionally injure herself to sue UA? Present Mike exclaimed, his voice incredulous. Recovery girl, the school nurse, shook her head in disapproval. That's concerning. A complete lack of regard for her own well-being and a blatant attempt to exploit the system. Just then, a staff member entered the observation room, carrying a data chip. Principal Nizu, we have the results of the written exam for Class 1X applicant Midoriya Izuku. Nizu took the chip and plugged it into a nearby monitor. The screen displayed Izuku's score, a perfect 100%. The staff members exchanged stunned glances. A perfect score? Eraserhead muttered, a hint of surprise in his voice. In that advanced curriculum? Indeed, Nizu chirped. His theoretical understanding is exceptional. A moment later, another staff member rushed in. Principal, we have security footage from the entrance. Midoriya-kun dropped off a data chip before leaving the campus. Nizu raised an eyebrow. Let's see it. The footage showed Izuku approaching a security terminal, inserting a data chip, and then walking away. The staff played the contents of the chip. It was an audio recording, the conversation between the brunette girl and herself about her plan to feign injury. A minute later, the security cameras captured the brunette girl approaching the same terminal, her expression indignant. Excuse me. I demand to know the points that green-haired boy got for the practical exam. He held me back. I could have gotten more points if he hadn't interfered. He should give me his points. The UA staff in the observation room exchanged knowing glances. Well, that certainly clarifies her motivations, Midnight said dryly. Nizu smiled, a hint of something sharp in his eyes. Indeed, it seems Midoriya-kun is not only intelligent, but also perceptive. The staff reviewed the brunette girl's practical exam score. It was abysmal. Her attempts to gain points had been clumsy and ineffective. Finally, Nizu accessed Izuku's application file. He scrolled down to the personal statement section. One particular quote stood out, underlined and bolded. The age of heroes will end soon, and the age of science will start again. A profound silence fell over the observation room. The implications of the quirkless boy's words hung heavy in the air. Nizu chuckled softly. It seems our sole applicant for Class 1X has a rather ambitious vision for the future. He tapped his chin thoughtfully. I have a feeling things are about to get very interesting at UA. Izuku's modest apartment, a testament to his focused priorities, was a sanctuary of organized chaos. Bookshelves overflowed with scientific texts, diagrams covered the walls, and various half-finished contraptions sat on every available surface. He paced the small living room, his long legs eating up the limited space, a tangible air of anticipation surrounding him. The letter from UA was due any day now, the culmination of years of focused study and his unconventional performance in the entrance exams. His mind, never truly at rest, cycled through the possibilities. Acceptance was, logically speaking, highly probable given his perfect written score and his performance in the practical exam. Yet, the unique nature of his application for the newly established Class 1X introduced a significant variable, the unknown. Class 1X dorms, he murmured to himself, adjusting a pair of safety goggles perched precariously on his silver-streaked hair. Given that I am, statistically speaking, the entirety of the student body, the concept of dorms becomes somewhat paradoxical. Will I be assigned a solitary suite? Or will UA attempt some form of interdepartmental cohabitation? The logistical and social implications of the latter are intriguing, though potentially disruptive to focused research. He paused, stroking his chin thoughtfully. Sharing a living space with a heroics student, the potential for ideological clashes regarding the efficacy of quirk-based solutions versus scientific methodology is considerable. Imagine the debates regarding optimal projectile velocity or the structural integrity of villain-constructed obstacles. A small, almost mischievous grin flickered across his face. The possibilities for enlightening discussions are substantial. His thoughts then drifted to the vast repository of human knowledge that predated the widespread emergence of quirks. He had recently stumbled upon historical records detailing humanity's remarkable achievements in genetic engineering and species revival. The fact that humans had successfully brought back creatures like the dire wolf from extinction was astounding, a testament to the power of scientific understanding and manipulation of biological systems. To think, he mused, his emerald eyes wide with fascination, that humanity possessed such mastery over genetics even before the advent of these quirks. And yet, with the rise of these inherent abilities, that scientific focus seems to have waned. A societal shift in priorities, a fascination with the immediate power of quirks overshadowing the long-term potential of scientific advancement. It's a perplexing inefficiency. The next day, as if summoned by his anticipation, a crisp white envelope bearing the UA seal arrived. Izuku's hand trembled slightly as he took it. He carefully slit the seal and extracted the contents, a formal letter and a thin, circular disc. The letter contained standard congratulatory remarks and a list of required materials. However, a separate, handwritten note caught his eye. Midoriya-kun, given the nature of Class 1X and the practical work involved, we advise against purchasing the standard UA uniform at this time. Please arrive in clothing suitable for potentially messy and chemically intensive activities. We look forward to welcoming you. Sincerely, Nizu. Izuku's lips quirked into a smile. Pragmatic. Efficient. I approve. He then turned his attention to the disc. As he pressed a small button on its surface, a holographic image flickered to life, projecting a familiar, albeit slightly smaller, figure. All Might. Young Midoriya. All Might's booming voice echoed in the small apartment, albeit in a digitized form. Congratulations on your outstanding performance in the UA entrance exams. The hologram shifted to display Izuku's scores. For the written exam, 100%. For villain points in the practical exam, 78. And then, a separate category. Hero points, 60. Total, 138 points. Your theoretical knowledge is truly exceptional, young Midoriya. All Might continued, his holographic smile beaming. And your actions during the practical exam, while perhaps unconventional in their direct combat application, demonstrated a commendable level of strategic thinking and a genuine desire to assist your fellow examinees. Your rescue of young Yaoyorozu from the falling debris and your aid to Shinso were noted and factored into your score. A true hero acts not only for themselves, but for the well-being of others. Izuku blinked, slightly surprised by the praise for his hero points. His primary motivation had been logical efficiency and minimizing potential casualties, but the positive acknowledgement was not unwelcome. Therefore, All Might announced with a flourish, "We are proud to inform you that you have not only been accepted into UA High School, but you achieved the highest overall score in the entire entrance exam. Welcome to Class 1X. A triumphant grin spread across Izuku's face. Excellent. The first step in the scientific revolution has been successfully executed. The holographic All Might then detailed the next steps, including orientation and move-in day for the dormitories, in 2 days. Izuku immediately began preparations. His packing was less about clothes and personal effects and more about organizing his research notes, scientific equipment, scaled-down versions of his larger projects, and a carefully curated selection of chemicals and materials. He surveyed his attire, recalling Mizu's advice. The standard UA uniform, with its crisp lines and formal appearance, was indeed ill-suited for the kind of work he envisioned. He decided on a set of durable, dark pants, a plain blue long-sleeved shirt made of a stain-resistant synthetic fabric, and his sturdy, reinforced sneakers. Over this, he planned to wear a modified lab coat he had stitched himself, complete with numerous pockets for tools and samples. This ensemble, he reasoned, struck the perfect balance between practicality and a subtle air of scientific authority. As he packed, his mind raced with the possibilities that awaited him at UA. A dedicated laboratory space, access to advanced scientific equipment, the potential to interact with, and perhaps subtly influence the future heroes of Japan. The prospect was exhilarating. The UA dorms for Class 1X, he mused, carefully placing a set of miniature distillation apparatus into a reinforced case. Even if it is a solitary living space, it represents a strategic foothold within the very heart of hero society. A base of operations from which to disseminate the principles of scientific reasoning and technological innovation. He imagined the reactions of the heroic students to his arrival, a lone figure amidst their boisterous, quirk-fueled camaraderie. Would they be curious? Dismissive? Hostile? Regardless, Izuku was prepared. He had his intellect, his inventions, and an unwavering belief in the eventual triumph of science. With his preparations complete, Izuku surveyed his packed belongings. He was ready to enter the lion's den, not as a lamb, but as a catalyst for change. The age of heroes might still be dominant, but within the walls of UA, the seeds of a scientific revolution were about to be sown by its first, and for now, only, student of Class 1X. Let's get excited, people, he declared to the empty apartment, a wide, almost manic grin stretching across his face. The next stage of the experiment is about to begin. 10 billion% sure. The train ride to UA was a blur of calculations and theoretical musings for Izuku. He mentally reviewed his notes on advanced robotics and the potential applications of his exoskeleton in various scientific fields. The other passengers, mostly students heading to their respective high schools, gave him curious glances, intrigued by his tall stature and the self-designed lab coat he wore. Upon arriving at the sprawling UA campus, Izuku consulted the map provided in his acceptance package. The Class 1X dormitory building was located in a quieter section, slightly separated from the more bustling Heroics dorms. As he walked towards it, his unique attire drew more than a few stares from students milling about. Heroics applicants, easily identifiable by their athletic builds and confident strides, eyed him with a mixture of confusion and mild disdain. Support course students, with their tool belts and inventive gadgets, seemed more curious, some even offering tentative nods of acknowledgement. The Class 1X dorm building was indeed a solitary structure, a modern, two-story building that looked newly constructed. Izuku entered the main hall to find it completely empty. A sense of quiet anticipation filled the air. He found a directory near the entrance and located the room designated for him, a spacious suite on the second floor. The room was significantly larger than his apartment, comprising a combined living and study area, a separate bedroom, and a private laboratory space equipped with basic but functional scientific apparatus. A wide window offered a view of the UA grounds. Izuku surveyed his new domain with satisfaction. Ample workspace, he murmured, placing his trunk in the center of the room. Sufficient ventilation in the laboratory. The structural integrity appears sound. Logistically optimal. Over the next few hours, Izuku efficiently unpacked and organized his belongings. Bookshelves were erected and filled. His experimental equipment was meticulously arranged in the lab, and his living space took on a familiar air of organized scientific inquiry. By late afternoon, his Class 1X dorm room had been transformed into a functional research outpost, complete with diagrams on the walls and the faint scent of various chemicals hanging in the air. Content with his setup, Izuku decided to take a walk and familiarize himself with the campus. He strolled outside, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the grounds. As he passed by one of the larger, more boisterous dormitory buildings, the unmistakable sound of energetic chatter and quirk demonstrations drifted out. He recognized it as the Hero Course dorms. As he walked closer, a figure with rigid posture and choppy blue hair emerged, his glasses glinting in the sunlight. It was the boy from the entrance exam, Ida. He spotted Izuku and his eyes widened in what appeared to be disapproval. "You there?" Ida called out, his voice loud and accusatory. "You are a student of UA, are you not? Why are you not wearing the proper uniform? This is a place of discipline and order. Your lack of adherence to regulations is unacceptable." Izuku stopped, turning to face Ida with a neutral expression. "My acceptance letter specifically advised against purchasing the standard uniform due to the nature of my studies in Class 1X. My attire is practical and suitable for scientific experimentation as per the instructions I received." Ida's brow furrowed. "Class 1X? I was unaware of such a class. What kind of undisciplined curriculum would exempt a student from the mandatory uniform?" He made a series of sharp, chopping motions with his hand. "Regulations are in place for a reason. They instill a sense of unity and professionalism." Before Izuku could offer a detailed explanation of the principles of specialized vocational attire, a voice drawled from behind Ida. "Chill out, Ida. He's probably got a good reason. Not everyone here's aiming to be a flashy hero, you know." Aizawa Shota, his perpetually tired eyes half closed, stood leaning against the doorway of the hero dorms. He glanced at Izuku's lab coat. "He's telling the truth. Class 1X has a different focus. Lay off him." Ida's rigid posture softened slightly, though his disapproval remained evident. "Aizawa-sensei, I was merely attempting to ensure that all students adhere to the standards of UA." Aizawa sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Just be quiet, Ida. Some of us are trying to nap before patrol. He turned and disappeared back into the dorm building. Ida, though still looking perplexed, refrained from further reprimands. Izuku nodded curtly and continued his walk. A little further along, near a quieter building, he saw a familiar figure with tired, purple eyes leaning against a wall. It was Shinso, the boy he had assisted during the practical exam. Shinso looked up, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. Hey, you're that weird gear guy from the exam. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. Thanks for the blaster, by the way. Actually helped me take down a few more of those clunky robots. Efficient energy projection can often compensate for a lack of direct physical enhancement, Izuku replied, his own lips curving into a rare, genuine smile. My analysis indicated that your quirk was more suited for indirect engagement. They fell into conversation, discovering a shared appreciation for logical reasoning and a certain skepticism towards the more flamboyant aspects of hero society. Shinso, now a student in Class 1A having surprisingly scored higher than expected, likely due to Izuku's unintentional assistance, expressed his own frustrations with the hero course's emphasis on flashy quirks over strategic thinking. As they talked, the door to the 1A dorm building slid open, and several students emerged, drawn by Shinso's conversation. Among them were a spiky-haired redhead, a cheerful-looking brunette with round cheeks, a serious-looking girl with a creation quirk, and a few others Izuku vaguely remembered from the entrance exam. Bakugo was conspicuously absent. Who's this, Shinso? The redhead asked, his grin wide and friendly. This is Midoriya, Shinso replied. He was in the practical exam. He helped me out. Curious eyes turned to Izuku and his lab coat. What's with the getup? The brunette girl asked, tilting her head. Are you in the support course? I am enrolled in Class 1X, Advanced Studies in Applied Sciences and Engineering, Izuku stated, his voice clear and matter-of-fact. Class 1X? The creation quirk girl, Yaoyorozu Momo, repeated, her brow furrowed in thought. I haven't heard of such a class. It is a newly established program, Izuku explained. My focus is not on heroics, nor on direct support for heroes. My aim is to advance the scientific understanding of the world and to develop technologies that will benefit society as a whole. So you're not going to be a hero? The redhead asked, a hint of surprise in his voice. Izuku's gaze swept over the group, his emerald eyes unwavering. The age of heroes, as it currently exists, is a paradigm nearing its expiration date. It is a system predicated on unpredictable, often illogical abilities, leading to a cycle of reactive measures rather than proactive solutions. My goal is to usher in a new era, the age of science. A stunned silence fell over the group. They exchanged bewildered glances. The age of science? The brunette girl repeated, clearly confused. What's that supposed to mean? Izuku sighed, a familiar frustration creeping into his voice. Consider the state of the world before the widespread manifestation of quirks. Humanity stood on the precipice of interstellar colonization. We possessed the technology to manipulate genetics, to revive extinct species. Yet, with the advent of quirks, all focus shifted. Resources, research, societal priorities, all diverted towards the amplification and application of these random mutations. He gestured emphatically. It is akin to a primate on the verge of crafting a sophisticated stone tool being distracted by a shiny, ultimately useless pebble. The potential for true progress, for understanding the fundamental laws of the universe and applying that knowledge for the betterment of all, has been stagnated. Momo, her intelligent mind quickly grasping the essence of Izuku's argument, stepped forward. What Midoriya-kun is saying is that he believes humanity's focus on quirks has overshadowed the potential of scientific advancement. He sees the reliance on inherent abilities as a distraction from the systematic development of knowledge and technology that could lead to more profound and lasting societal improvements. The simpler explanation seemed to resonate with some of the students, though confusion still lingered. So you think quirks are bad? The redhead asked, his enthusiasm slightly dampened. Quirks are a biological phenomenon worthy of scientific study, Izuku clarified. However, the societal obsession with them, the near-exclusive focus on their application for combat and superficial displays of power, has led to a neglect of fundamental scientific inquiry and technological innovation. He paused, his gaze intense. The cycle of hero versus villain is a self-perpetuating one. Quirks clash, destruction ensues, heroes react. It is a constant state of damage control, not genuine progress. Science, on the other hand, offers the potential for true solutions, for preventative measures, for advancements that transcend the limitations of individual quirks. Aizawa, who had apparently been eavesdropping from the doorway, stepped forward again. He's got a point. The reliance on quirks can make people complacent. They forget the importance of critical thinking and problem-solving without relying on inherent powers. Just then, a shrill voice echoed from nearby. "Hey, you're that weirdo who held me back during the exam." The brunette girl from the practical exam, Uraraka Achiko, stomped towards the group, her cheeks flushed with indignation. "You cost me points, you know. I was going to show that 0-pointer what for," she exclaimed, pointing an accusing finger at Izuku. Izuku blinked, a flicker of recognition in his eyes. "Your plan to deliberately injure yourself in order to initiate legal action against UA was illogical and inefficient. Furthermore, my intervention did not negatively impact your ability to accrue points through conventional means, had you chosen to engage the other robotic entities effectively." Uraraka's jaw dropped. "How did you know about that?" Before Izuku could elaborate, Shinso stepped forward, a sardonic smile on his face. "Maybe because some of us were actually trying to pass the exam based on merit, not by trying to scam the system." The other students looked at Uraraka with varying degrees of surprise and disapproval. Izuku, meanwhile, had already lost interest in the petty squabble. His mind was racing with the implications of Aizawa's unexpected agreement and the potential for collaboration with Shinso, who seemed to possess a similar intellectual curiosity. "Fascinating," he murmured to himself, adjusting his lab coat. "An unexpected ally within the heroics department, and further evidence of the flawed logic prevalent within the general education populace." The day had been a whirlwind of introductions and ideological clashes. Izuku Midoriya, the sole student of Class 1X, had made his presence known, not with a heroic declaration, but with a scientific manifesto. The age of heroes might still reign supreme at UA, but the seeds of a new era had been sown, and in the quiet solitude of his laboratory dorm, Izuku was already hard at work, preparing for the scientific revolution he was 10 billion% sure was coming. The first day of school at UA dawned bright and clear, a symbol of new beginnings for the hundreds of aspiring heroes and support specialists. For Izuku, however, it was the commencement of a meticulously planned paradigm shift. He arrived at the designated time for Class 1X homeroom, a room that, much like his dorm, exuded an air of newness and quiet anticipation. Stepping inside, Izuku's eyebrows rose in mild surprise. Behind the teacher's desk sat Principal Nizu, sipping from a delicate-looking teacup. The principal's ever-present smile seemed a touch wider than usual, as if he were privy to some grand, amusing secret. "Ah, Midoriya-kun. Welcome, welcome," Nizu chirped, his voice surprisingly deep for his small stature. "Please, take a seat. You're right on time. Punctuality is a virtue, especially in the pursuit of scientific rigor." Izuku nodded, placing his backpack beside a desk in the front row. He was, as expected, the only student present. The realization of his singular status in Class 1X solidified the unique path he had chosen. "Principal Nizu," Izuku began, his tone analytical, "given that I am the sole member of Class 1X, what will be the structure of our homeroom sessions? Will there be a modified curriculum, or will I be integrated into another class for certain subjects?" Nizu chuckled, placing his teacup down with a gentle clink. "An excellent question, Midoriya-kun. Efficient and directly relevant. For homeroom, it will primarily be just you and I. Think of it as personalized guidance. We will discuss your progress, address any logistical challenges you may encounter, and perhaps engage in stimulating intellectual discourse." His eyes twinkled. "I have a feeling our conversations will be most enlightening." Izuku considered this. One-on-one sessions with the principal of UA. It was an unexpected development, but one that held significant potential for accessing resources and influencing the school's administration. "I see," Izuku replied, a hint of intrigue in his voice. "That arrangement could indeed prove beneficial for the efficient pursuit of my academic and long-term objectives." Just then, A frantic knocking echoed from the door. Before either Izuku or Nizu could respond, the door slid open to reveal a disheveled Aizawa, his capture weapon askew, and his hair sticking up at odd angles. "Principal," Aizawa groaned, his usual air of weary resignation amplified tenfold. "That problem child from Gen Ed Uraraka. She's causing a scene at the orientation hall. Something about wanting Midoriya's exam points?" He rubbed his temples as if battling a severe headache. "I tried to expel her on the spot for the sheer audacity, but Vlad King talked me down." Nizu's smile remained unfazed. "Ah, young Uraraka. It seems her entrepreneurial spirit extends beyond manipulating gravity. Don't worry, Aizawa-kun. Security is handling the situation." It seems her outburst was quite disruptive. Izuku raised an eyebrow, a flicker of scientific curiosity in his gaze. "Her persistence in this matter is illogical. The allocation of entrance exam points is a finite and immutable system. Her attempts to retroactively acquire points she did not earn demonstrate a fundamental misunderstanding of resource management and competitive assessment." Aizawa shot Izuku a tired but slightly impressed look. "You've only been here for 10 minutes, kid, and you've already grasped the level of irrationality we deal with on a daily basis. Irrationality is a significant impediment to progress," Izuku stated matter-of-factly. "It introduces unpredictable variables and skews logical decision-making processes." Nizu chuckled again. "Indeed, Midoriya-kun, a perspective I wholeheartedly share. Now, shall we proceed with a brief overview of your unique curriculum?" Before Nizu could elaborate, a school-wide announcement crackled over the intercom, requesting all first-year students to proceed to the main orientation hall. "Ah, perfect timing," Nizu exclaimed, hopping off his desk. "Shall we, Midoriya-kun? It's time for you to be formally introduced to the UA experience, in all its chaotic glory." Izuku followed Nizu out of the homeroom and towards the massive gymnasium where the orientation ceremony was being held. The sheer number of students gathered was statistically significant. He observed the various cliques forming, the boisterous heroics students, the focused support course applicants with their unique gadgets, the more reserved business course students, and the large contingent of general education students. Notably absent was Class 1A. Izuku made a mental note of this. Perhaps their rigorous training already necessitated a different schedule. As Nizu took the stage, a hush fell over the gymnasium. He began with a welcoming address, his tone both jovial and authoritative, outlining the history and philosophy of UA High School. He then proceeded to introduce the faculty, each teacher receiving polite applause. When he reached the heroics department, the cheers were the loudest, especially for All Might, who stood tall and beaming despite his recent encounter with Izuku. Izuku observed the symbol of peace with a detached, analytical gaze, noting the subtle signs of lingering strain that most others seemed to miss. Then came the support course teachers, their innovative creations eliciting gasps of admiration. The business course instructors were introduced with a focus on their crucial role in the hero industry's infrastructure. Finally, Nizu's tone shifted slightly as he addressed the general education students. "And now," Nizu announced, his gaze sweeping across the assembled students, "we come to a new and rather unique addition to UA's academic offerings, the Advanced Studies in Applied Sciences and Engineering program, also known as Class 1X. A ripple of curiosity spread through the gymnasium. Nizu's eyes twinkled as he continued. This specialized curriculum is designed for students with a particular aptitude for scientific inquiry, technological innovation, and the legal frameworks that govern them. Oddly enough, he paused, a mischievous smile playing on his lips. We currently have only one student enrolled in this pioneering class, Midoriya Izuku. A murmur of surprise and confusion filled the hall. All eyes turned towards Izuku, who stood calmly amidst the crowd, his lab coat making him instantly recognizable. Nizu continued, his voice regaining its formal tone. However, for any general education students who find themselves drawn to the rigorous and rewarding pursuit of scientific knowledge, there will be an opportunity to transfer to Class 1X based on exceptional performance in the midterm examinations. The standards, I assure you, will be demanding. He then addressed the matter of attire. You may have noticed that Midoriya-kun is not wearing the standard UA uniform. This is intentional. The curriculum of Class 1X will involve a significant amount of, shall we say, hands-on experimentation. Projects involving potentially messy and chemically intensive procedures will be commonplace. Therefore, investing in a uniform that would likely be rendered unusable within the first week would be fiscally irresponsible. As Nizu finished his explanation, a familiar, irate voice cut through the murmuring crowd. That's not fair. All heads turned to see Uraraka standing in the general education section, her face flushed with anger. Why does he get to wear whatever he wants? He probably cheated on the exam. He doesn't deserve to be here. Security personnel immediately moved towards her, but Uraraka continued her outburst. He held me back during the practical. He stole my points. He should be expelled. The gymnasium fell silent, all eyes fixed on the escalating drama. Izuku simply observed Uraraka's outburst with a detached air, his mind analyzing the emotional and logical inconsistencies in her tirade. Her emotional response is disproportionate to the perceived injustice, he murmured to himself. Her accusations lack factual basis and demonstrate a continued failure to accept personal responsibility for her performance. Despite the efforts of the security guards, Uraraka continued to yell, her voice rising in pitch until it became a near shriek. Accusations and demands for Izuku's expulsion filled the air, disrupting the orientation ceremony entirely. Nizu, his smile never faltering, simply raised a paw. Security, please escort Ms. Uraraka out of the gymnasium. Her disruptive behavior is counterproductive to the spirit of UA. Uraraka was eventually led away, still protesting loudly, leaving an awkward silence in her wake. Nizu cleared his throat. Well, that was certainly spirited. As I was saying, he smoothly transitioned back into his speech, continuing with the introduction of the remaining departments and important school regulations, as if the dramatic interruption had been a mere footnote. Izuku, however, couldn't shake the feeling that his presence at UA was already stirring the pot in ways he hadn't fully anticipated. The blatant hostility from someone he had arguably assisted was a data point worth analyzing. The orientation concluded without further incident. As the students began to disperse, Izuku found himself approached by Shinso. Quite the welcoming committee, Shinso commented dryly, a hint of amusement in his voice. Seems like you've already made an impression. Her emotional volatility and illogical reasoning are noteworthy, Izuku replied, his gaze still fixed on the direction Uraraka had been escorted. It highlights a potential deficiency in the critical thinking skills of some general education students. Yeah, well, try telling her that, Shinso chuckled. Anyway, you heading back to your solitary dorm? Indeed, Izuku replied. I have several theoretical models I wish to refine. Maybe I'll swing by later? Shinso offered. We could discuss the flaws in the hero-centric curriculum. A rare smile touched Izuku's lips. That would be logically sound. As Izuku walked back to the Class 1X dorm building, he couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. His first day had been anything but ordinary. He was the sole student in a brand new, unconventional program. He had already attracted the ire of a general education student and found a potential intellectual ally in a heroics applicant. And his homeroom teacher was the principal of UA himself. The age of heroes might still be the dominant ideology at UA, but within the quiet confines of the Class 1X dorm, the gears of scientific revolution were already turning, driven by the singular ambition and intellect of Izuku Midoriya. The experiment had begun, and the results, he was 10 billion% sure, would be groundbreaking. Later that evening, as Izuku was immersed in the intricate schematics of a miniature electromagnetic levitation device, a knock echoed on his door. He opened it to find Shinso leaning against the frame, a casual air about him that contrasted with his earlier guarded demeanor. Hey, Shinso said, nodding towards the hallway. Figured you might be getting a little stir-crazy in your science sanctuary. Some of us in 1A were thinking of hanging out in our common room. You want to join? Izuku paused, considering the invitation. Social interaction with the heroics students presented both opportunities and potential pitfalls. It could be a chance to subtly introduce his ideas and gauge their reactions, but also a risk of unnecessary conflict or misunderstanding. Logistically, Izuku began, adjusting his goggles, Engaging with a larger sample group could provide valuable data on the prevailing attitudes towards scientific advancement within the hero track demographic. Furthermore, collaborative discussions might yield unforeseen insights. Therefore, a small smile touched his lips. Your proposition is acceptable. Shinso raised an eyebrow, a hint of amusement in his eyes. All right then, acceptable. Lead the way, science guy. As they walked towards the 1A dorm building, the sounds of boisterous laughter and energetic chatter grew louder. Izuku observed the vibrant atmosphere with a detached curiosity, a stark contrast to the quiet solitude of his own dorm. Upon entering the 1A common room, Izuku was greeted by a wave of curious gazes. The room was a colorful explosion of teenage energy, with mismatched furniture, hero merchandise, and the lingering scent of various snacks. The students of Class 1A, minus Bakugu who was likely brooding in his room, were a diverse bunch, their personalities as varied as their quirks. Midoriya's joining us? Kirishima exclaimed, his usual enthusiastic grin in place. Awesome. More the merrier. Welcome, Midoriya-san, Yaoyorozu said politely, offering him a seat on a nearby couch. So, you're really not aiming to be a hero? Ashido Mina asked, her bright pink skin and energetic movements making her stand out. That's, totally different. Izuku settled onto the couch, his long frame making him tower slightly over some of the other students. My aspirations lie beyond the conventional framework of hero society. I seek to understand and manipulate the fundamental principles of the universe to facilitate societal progress. The conversation flowed, touching on various topics, their first day at UA, their initial impressions of the teachers, and, inevitably, Izuku's unique field of study. He fielded their questions with a calm, analytical demeanor, occasionally injecting his characteristic dry humor. So, this age of science thing, Kaminari Denki said, scratching his head. Is that like robots taking over the world? A statistically improbable and culturally misinformed trope, Izuku replied dryly. The age of science implies a societal paradigm shift where rational inquiry, empirical evidence, and technological innovation are prioritized over innate, often unpredictable abilities. Suddenly, Mineta Minoru, a small student with sticky ball-like hair, piped up. Hey, Midoriya, you look like you know your stuff. You play any video games? Izuku blinked, a flicker of something akin to amusement in his eyes. Video games. A digital simulation designed for entertainment? I have engaged in such activities on occasion, primarily for the analysis of human behavioral patterns and strategic decision-making under simulated pressure. Ooh, you're one of those super smart gamers, huh? Ciro Hanta said, grinning. We were just about to hop onto some Call of Duty. Want to join? See how your strategic decision-making holds up against some real competition. Intrigued by the opportunity to observe human interaction in a competitive virtual environment, Izuku agreed. Soon, several students were huddled around a large screen, controllers in hand, ready to face off against the stoic scientist. What ensued was a massacre. Izuku, his analytical mind processing information at lightning speed, his reflexes honed by years of dissecting complex systems, and his understanding of spatial awareness bordering on precognitive, utterly dominated the match. Headshots, flanking maneuvers, and tactical deployments of virtual equipment were executed with cold, ruthless efficiency. The heroic students, accustomed to relying on their powerful quirks in physical combat, were left dumbfounded as their avatars were repeatedly and mercilessly eliminated. Izuku, his usual neutral expression replaced by a thin, almost predatory smirk, surveyed the digital carnage with a quiet satisfaction. Impressive efficiency, Tokoyami Fumikage croaked, his dark shadow creature echoing his astonishment. Where did that come from? Jiro Kyoka asked, her earphone jacks twitching. You were like a gaming Terminator. Izuku simply shrugged, the smirk fading. The principles of resource management, spatial awareness, and predictive analysis are applicable across various systems, both physical and virtual. The brief foray into the digital realm had left a lasting impression. The seemingly aloof scientist possessed a hidden talent for virtual warfare, a testament to his extraordinary processing power. As the initial shock wore off, the conversation shifted back to Izuku's ambitions. So, this whole bringing back the age of science thing, Kirishima said, his enthusiasm returning but tinged with curiosity. What exactly does that look like? Izuku's gaze became distant, a spark of fervent passion igniting in his emerald eyes. Imagine a world where humanity's potential is not limited by the vagaries of genetics. A world where we once again strive to break the very laws of nature, not through brute force, but through understanding. He stood up, pacing the common room, his tall frame radiating an unexpected intensity. Before Quirks, humanity stood on the precipice of true cosmic expansion. We were sending probes to the outer reaches of our solar system, dreaming of interstellar voyages. We had unlocked the secrets of DNA, bringing back creatures long thought extinct. The majestic dire wolf roamed the earth once more, a testament to our scientific prowess. His voice grew with fervor. Think of the possibilities. With continued scientific advancement, we could have cured diseases that plague us now. We could have engineered sustainable energy sources, eliminating our reliance on dwindling resources. We could have even perhaps brought back the dinosaurs, those magnificent titans of a bygone era, not as weapons or spectacles, but as subjects of scientific wonder. He stopped, his gaze sweeping over the awestruck faces of Class 1A. But then Quirks. A fascinating biological anomaly, yes, but one that has become an intellectual and societal black hole. All our focus, all our resources, poured into these inherent abilities, while the boundless potential of scientific inquiry lies dormant. Izuku's voice dropped slightly, tinged with a hint of melancholy. A part of humanity died when Quirks emerged. We became complacent. We accepted the limitations imposed by our genetics, becoming, in a sense, nature's lapdogs, relying on the gifts we were given instead of striving to overcome our natural constraints through intellect and innovation. He took a deep breath, his eyes blazing with conviction. But I will not let that spark of human ingenuity die. I will rekindle the flame of scientific discovery. I will look the gods of nature in their eyes and say, we are not content with the hand we were dealt. We will reshape our destiny through knowledge and creation. We are back. As he spoke, the lights in the common room seemed to subtly shift, casting dramatic shadows across his face, highlighting the intensity of his conviction. The students of Class 1A stared at him, a mixture of awe and bewilderment in their eyes. His words, though unconventional, resonated with a primal sense of human ambition and the desire to push beyond perceived limitations. Wo Kirishima breathed, his usual boisterous energy replaced by a quiet wonder. That's intense, Midoriya. So, you want to bring back dinosaurs? Ashido asked, her eyes wide with a childlike fascination. Theoretically, it is within the realm of possibility with sufficient genetic data and advanced cloning techniques, Izuku confirmed, his voice returning to its usual analytical tone. However, the ethical and ecological implications would require extensive study and debate. He then sighed, a hint of disappointment in his voice. It is regrettable that more students from the General Education Department did not see the value in the Class 1X curriculum. Imagine the collaborative potential, the diverse perspectives that could have enriched our scientific endeavors. We could talk to some of the Gen Ed students, Yaoyorozu offered thoughtfully. Explain what you're trying to do. Maybe some of them would be interested in transferring after the midterms. That would be a logically sound course of action, Izuku conceded. Disseminating information and cultivating interest are crucial first steps in any societal shift. The rest of the evening was spent with Class 1A peppering Izuku with questions, trying to grasp the full scope of his ambitious vision. He explained concepts ranging from advanced propulsion systems for space travel to the intricacies of ancient DNA sequencing, his enthusiasm for science proving surprisingly infectious. As the night wore on, the initial skepticism of the heroics students began to give way to a grudging respect for Izuku's intellect and his unwavering dedication to his goals. He was different, undeniably so, but his passion for knowledge and his vision for the future were undeniably compelling. By the time Shinso walked Izuku back to the solitary Class 1X dorm building, a silent understanding had formed between the unconventional scientist and the aspiring heroes. They might walk different paths, but perhaps, just perhaps, their futures were more intertwined than they currently realized. The age of heroes was still in full swing, but in the quiet lab of Class 1, X's soul student, the blueprints for a scientific revolution were already being drawn. So, this was the end of part 1 of this series. Stay tuned for next part of this series, and if you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.